Hi everyone, it's Bethany. Here to talk about how I've just recently switched from the lime tree fruits daily weekly combination that I was using to DIYFish version 2.2. I started it, I bought the August trial and I couldn't wait to start August, so I've kind of had to print out a second copy and get that set up for July. Because I was just too impatient. And I have been using it for a full week and a couple of days. So I thought that I would do a video right now. Sorry about the shadow. It's late, but I wanted to get some recording done. So we can have hand puppets if it gets boring in the middle. Yeah, sorry. So I wanted to give you, show you how I've set up and how I've already made a few changes. And then in another few weeks, I'll see about doing another video if I've kind of settled in a little bit better. And if I've made some more changes, then I will, fill you in on that in a little bit. So anyway, this is, if you're not familiar with the DIYFish inserts, what makes them unique is... at least in my opinion, there's probably lots of things depending on which version you're using. But what makes them unique is the ability to see your month, your week, and your day all at once because of fold out pages, as well as a real focus on tracking on what are called the monthly and weekly charts. And we'll take a look at those in a second. Yeah, so those two components really, I think, make them unique over what else is out there, at least what I have seen. Okay, so essentially, you get this little pocket for a month. So this, like I said, now this isn't a full month, but it is 3 weeks because there was July is one of those seemingly long months. So I have 3 weeks worth of inserts in here. So it's almost a full month. And you can kind of fold it up and to make this little pocket. And so I have, as I've said, I've kind of taped over the August parts to make it July. And I also, there weren't tabs. Now I thought, and maybe when you get the whole year, because I thought I heard someone say that they actually do have, like mine, this little gray box just says 2014. I thought I had seen in somebody's video that the months actually get printed on this edge, so you wouldn't have tabs that stick out, but you'd at least, if you were kind of flipping through, you'd be able to pick out your month perhaps. This tab I made just by punching, actually I have it over here, I just punched with this little punch a circle out of cardstock, actually an actual card that was white on the inside and striped on the outside, and then just glued that on. Paper clips. This system can be a little bit daunting and a little bit, because it's complicated in terms of there are lots of components. I don't mean complicated in like a negative way necessarily, just complicated in terms of there being lots of components and lots of options and that kind of thing, as opposed to it being, entirely straightforward that this is what this section is for. There's a lot of open sections and a lot of opportunities to play around and to make it what you want, which is great, but it can be a tad overwhelming. So I found that page markers and paper clips are my friend with this. Okay, so when you print out, the front page is actually almost completely blank. You just have your date, your month, and your year, and the rest is blank. For July, I posted this. I just put this quote on that I'd had in another place. I just put it there. But for August, what I actually did was use this space as my monthly to-do list. There are tons of spaces, as you're going to see. I just couldn't find a place that I really liked for my monthly to-do list. And I thought that the monthly chart was going to be that place, but I just don't think that it is. So that's why here I didn't have a monthly to-do list. I was using the chart. But for next month, I've decided to add the to-do list in. So, but that's what your front page would look like. Here's this monthly chart that I keep talking about. This one, I'm still not I'm not sure about this in terms of what I'm going to use this for. Like I said, I was going to use it as just my to-do list. It just seems like a big waste of space because most of my to-dos are just things that one time needs to get done. And I had tried the idea of some of these things, kind of designating approximately when, maybe that would be helpful. But really, it felt more redundant, because I'm also going to put them, okay, so if I've given myself an entire week to do this, I'm also going to put that in on my weekly to-do list. So does it really, anyway. So right now, and I had also looked at maybe tracking my dailies here, so I would be able to see the whole month. I've done that before. I've tracked sort of these things or similar things over the course of a month, and I liked that, being able to see them all together. I just found that this was kind of far removed from, like, when you'll see, I guess, as you kind of dig deeper into the system, that flipping back to this page all the time just seemed kind of far away. I know that kind of sounds silly, but I think if you have used the system or seen it, you'll kind of maybe get what I'm saying. It just seems like you have to kind of dig yourself back out to always come here. So anyway, this I'm not using for really anything useful right now. And I don't really have great plans for August yet either. This is still a thinking about a work in progress kind of thing. Okay, so then the next one on the back of your weekly chart is your your weekly chart is your monthly calendar. So what's interesting about this is they run vertically as opposed to horizontally like most calendars. So it actually goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like this, which means that all of your Mondays line up like this, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so on, so on, and so on. Now this is the version 2.2, and from what I haven't gone through absolutely everything yet, but from what I gather, this is sort of what's different about the 2.2 versus the 2.1 is the way that the things that are included on here. This is a reminder section, and then this is one that's called My Objectives, and it's basically I'm trying to see here. I'm trying to check and see what was originally there and what I've added. So it did have a series of check boxes, and it did have this line with another box over here. So you could certainly do 2 separate things with those boxes. This I'm also not sure that this is, I'm also not exactly sure. This would be a place where a monthly to-do list might go in the future. What I found about this is it's just a little bit tricky, I guess, to get to. So for example, if I'm flipping over to August and I want to get into there, you have to flip open, open, and then flip in. I mean, it's not that bad, I guess, but yeah, so right now, that's another one of those areas that I'm still thinking about. So let's flip back. So these are things that I want to do like once a week, and that's what I'm using, and that's what I have right now set up for August too. We'll see how that goes. And then just a notes section down there. Now this, moving on, this next section is actually the first week that I had done. And now at the top, this actually says, it says weekly review, and then hiding under the tape says last week. So I assume what you're supposed to do is, okay, I guess if I look at this, so if this is where my week ends, so this is 1 week here, I'm supposed to review this week on this page, but that just makes absolutely no sense to me. So I have actually reviewed, I guess it makes sense in terms of like always moving forward, but I guess I think in terms of bundles. So if this is my weekly bundle, then I don't want this week's recap on the next week's bundle, if that makes sense. So for me, this is my weekly recap for this week, because when this comes out, it's its own little bundle of a week, and I want to keep that information all together. Okay. Then we have most important, and then another checkbox here. So this space I've just been using to highlight a few really important weekly things, but not as my overall weekly to-do list. That is something that has actually changed, I think 3 times since I've got this. So 3 times in like 8 days, I've changed the location of my weekly to-do list. Okay, so when you flip open your week, you can see how this is starting to build. So here's my month, and now here's my week. And again, Mondays, Tuesdays, everything lines up across the page like that. And this is just a big open space. And this was one of these ones I had to think about for a while. It's marked off into these rectangles. So each of these sets, tons of options. I was doing a prompted gratitude list where, every day you had specific things you're supposed to talk about. I did it in July, I did it in June, and I found July's list just very difficult to get through. And that's the only thing I could think of to use here. And I was a gratitude list, and I really like the idea of having your gratitude list all together in one place. But it just seemed like the perfect place for it. And so I've tried, I decided to give it a try because I really couldn't come up with anything else that I wanted to use the space for. And it just seems like such a wonderful page to not use. And I love having it here. I don't know if I'm going to miss the idea of it all being together. But I guess it depends on whether you look at your gratitude as I'm doing a list so that I will have the list as some sort of product at the end of it, or whether you think of it in terms of I do this because on a daily basis this is a good habit for me to have, and that doing this every day will help affect my attitude. And so I guess if you're looking at it from that perspective, then it doesn't really matter where it is, because it's not about having this finished list of 1,000 things. It's about making it a daily habit, if that makes sense. Sorry, this is supposed to be about DIYFish and not my sort of philosophizing. I can't even talk tonight on being grateful. Anyway, so that's what I've been using this page for. Then over here is your weekly chart. And this was originally where I was going to put my to-do list. So my weekly, my weekly to-do list, when I'm talking about that, is just, so if today I'm thinking of something I want to do next week, but I don't have a specific day, let's say someday next week I want to get the car washed. And I want to remember that. So I want a place as part of next week where I can go and write car wash. And then when I get to next week, I can start assigning it. Tuesday's the best day for that, or whatever. That's what I mean by weekly to-do list. So I was going to do it here. But again, it was kind of the same thing as having the monthly on the monthly chart. Is you're just losing a lot of space. Like, I really only need to check. I don't need to know what day it was on or anything like that. So I'll show you in a second where I've moved it for the current week, and then also where I've moved it for next week, because I've already changed my mind again about that. But what is going to go on here, at least for the time being, is that list of weekly things that I had also put over here. This is why I don't think it actually needs to stay over there, is because I also have it over here. And that list of daily tasks from way back over here. Whoops. On the monthly chart, I've put here because this is what I mean by it. I wanted it closer, and this way it's part of that week. Now, I'm only seeing those days in a row, but it's important to me to chart these things. I've done different things with dailies, and I've had them written on each day, like written the whole list out every day. But it's important for me to see all the blank spaces as either motivation to get this done, or to reevaluate whether it really is something that should be a priority. Okay. So that's what I'm doing with my weekly chart. So I guess I didn't really mention this it's probably pretty self-explanatory, but basically it's boxed off for one for every day of either the week or the month, right? And you can be tracking, when you get things done or whatever. So now on the back, is sort of a blank planner. Pretty much everyone has used it that I've seen has used it as a meal planner. A few people I've seen, I think at least one I've seen, is using it as a blog planner. But essentially you can use it whatever you want to. It's divided up by day. And then there's a list as well. So obviously it kind of lends itself to a meal planner, and a grocery list. But now I like to have a one-page meal plan I started that right at the very end of my lime tree fruits. I was always using that space for other things, but right at the very end, because I do find it super helpful. It's quick, it seems, to plan in one space, because then you can easily see what you've already planned and throw in the other things. But I also need this information over on my days. I don't like to be constantly flipping back. But I will show you when I get to next week. I'll show you how I kind of keep track of this page. Now, this page prints out separately, and it's an optional page. You wouldn't have to print it, but I obviously did. Excuse me. Another blank page. And this, yeah, this is one of those ideas that we'll see when I get to next week about the for the weekly to-do list. This was candidate number 2 as location for the weekly to-do list, but it's kind of buried. And I'm actually going to take a break here for a second, because if I let these videos get too long, then my phone doesn't like to send them to the computer. So just a second, I'll be right back. Okay, so picking up from where we left off, blank page there that I was going to use, but I'm not using as my weekly to-do list. So essentially, you have 2 options. You can either print a day on 1 page or a day on 2 pages. I have the day on 2 pages here, which is essentially a sort of divided, semi-structured page, and then a completely blank page that you can do whatever you want with. You have a box up at the, okay, you've got the I feel face and the weather, and then an empty box, and then you've got your tracking your water, another checked box, you know what I mean, a box with a checked space. Then you have a schedule that goes all the way from 1 a.m. to midnight. Now, what I think is kind of genius is to save space and make it all fit, is that between 1 and 8 and then after 9, there's only 1 box per whole hour, as opposed to through the majority of the day, you have 2 boxes. So you have a box for every half hour, I guess, if that makes sense. Okay. Now, this page, at first, I didn't really know what I was going to do with them, so at first there's not a whole lot on them. And I'm not going to flip through every page, but that's essentially what a day on 2 pages looks like. Now, let's flip ahead, because I want to show you a little bit about... okay, so I guess just to kind of finish this week, when I finished the week, what I did was put the little clip... I probably won't be able to put on with one hand here, but put the little clip on here, sorry, to keep this... easy to flip through to get to my following, to the actual week that I'm currently in. Okay, so when we flip over, again, so that's a lot of the same, but what I wanted to show you was what I do with my page markers. Okay, so I have this one at the end of, between the 2 weeks, so that it's easy to find where the next week begins, if I need that information. Also, if we look at the end of my next week, this back sheet is going to be, I think, the final home of my weekly to-do list. So essentially it would have been, again, so it would be easy to find, because this blue sheet will be on the weekly to-do list. I've actually, in this one, okay, so you still have your week, and you have my gratitude, and my weekly chart right now is just those dailies and weeklies. Which I think I'm going to like, because it's giving me opportunity to add a few more dailies into it. Yeah, so that's working out okay right now. And this is what I was saying. My green sheet I've clipped this page 2 so that I can easily find my weekly chart and my meal plan. Now, obviously, it's a bit more difficult to write. I'd have to undo this to write on that, but I really don't write on this once the week has started. If I make changes to my menu, I don't bother making changes here. I actually write out my menu on my dailies. So if I'm making changes, this is where I would make the changes right there. So, but I like having this sheet or this marker here so that I can easily find my weekly chart. So this was where I ended up with my weekly tasks. I like it here because this was an empty space. I don't know what I'm going to do with this space, but I did find that it was buried once if you're looking ahead and you've got this whole package, folded up, it is a bit buried to try to find this page, as opposed to it just being, this page at the very end. So, and then I am using this as my today marker. I had another one that matched these that was clear, but because it was my daily one and moving all the time, it was starting to get a little worn out. And when I picked up this binder at Walmart, it was Franklin Covey, and so it came with this one. So I've just been using that. So I wasn't sure. The day on one page is exactly the same as this. It just doesn't have the extra note page. But I think that I could cram onto here if I wanted to. I wouldn't, at first I wasn't using these. And that's why I wasn't using this space, because I was using most important tasks up here and then my to-do list down here. But I do find that the graph on here, I like that it's little. I'm glad that it's little. But I do find that it's difficult to write on every line. You kind of want to have, you see how here I've got the spacing in between? Like you can see here, right, where I don't have the spacing, I've written quite small so that it doesn't feel super cramped. So I found when I was doing this, and yeah, I had to cramp a lot. So I could certainly fit on the day on one page if I wanted to, but I like having the extra space. And some people do great things, you know, in dividing up their space over here and using it for different things. I can see that probably down the road. Maybe I'll find uses for that right now. I've just been adding on some paper, and today I didn't need this for a list, but further down the week we're doing, we're having a big barbecue. So I use this as a to-do list and a shopping list. And then on this one, I did it as like a who's bringing what list, right? So, yeah. So the other thing I've done is I added this section here, which I haven't written on. But this, I use this as a coming up section. That's something that I added to my lime tree fruits, as well. And so this is for tasks that are relating to things coming up. Or if there's I will sometimes use this if there's an event that I want to remember, but generally I can see the events here. This is more task related. So if I have, you know, a barbecue that I'm going to, this is where I'll write, you know, remember to get dessert for the barbecue, or get dessert, or make, the, you know, whatever. So, yeah, so I guess for my next week, I've left this open. I'm waiting to see how the week goes with the weekly chart having just the dailies and the weeklies on it. We'll see how that works out. And I think I'm going to like having the weekly task list here because, I mean, like I said, when things are all bundled up, which is how I try to keep them, you can see how easy it is to get to your weekly tasks, right? You find your week. Now, I wrote the dates. So this is for the 28th of August to the 28th of July to the 3rd of August. So I wrote that here because I find it makes it easy to flip, to see that edge as you're flipping. And then I also wrote it in up here. Again, so if you're flipping kind of the other way, it's easy to see that. And you can see obviously how easy it is to get your weekly task list from here. Yeah, so that is, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about this. That is sort of my setup so far. And my first kind of thoughts. I guess my overall opinion so far is that I really like them. I feel like I can kind of spread out. I feel like there's a bit more room for my creativity on here. I found with the lime tree fruits, they're already so decorative that, I mean, I added some tape, but the tape was more functional, and I'd add a few stickers, but they always just felt a little out of place. I feel like in here there's a bit more room to, it's much more of a blank slate, I guess. And one isn't, like, neither is better or worse than the other. They're completely different, right? So I can certainly see myself going back to lime tree fruits at some point. You know, I may be the type that is going to switch back and forth from one format to the other when I get, you know, I get a little stir crazy and I have to go try something new. So I can see myself going back. But anyway. Sorry, my battery died, even though it's plugged in. Apparently I'm using battery at a faster rate than it is charging. So I'm going to say goodbye quickly and say that what I was trying to say is overall I'm really liking these inserts, but I'll keep you posted if things change. Okay, thanks, bye.